Yeah. So, you mentioned Lars, the late great uh, pianist and conductor Lars Vogt. You recorded him last summer, a month before he unfortunately passed away. Um, can you just talk a little bit about his demeanor and his energy that day? Um, because in the episode, he was so full of life and was vivacious and just it was almost like you couldn't tell that he was struggling because of just the way he carried himself. So could you just talk a little bit about that day, that energy, and if you were able to spend a lot of time with him and his family before or after the show?
The way everything came together for that shoot was really by accident.
Mhm.
There was a viewer of the show who wrote to us by coincidence in the nick of time,
Mhm.
saying you should really film Lars Vogt, and he's not well with his health. It just so happened that we were planning for our imminent filming trip to Europe.
Mhm.
We didn't know if we could swing this, and we didn't know if our schedules would line up. I wrote to him an email, and I said, I would love to feature you on this show. Is that something that you would like to do? And he says, yes, but unfortunately, the window of time that you gave me is when I'm scheduled to be performing in France. Um, but I'm not sure that I'm well enough. So if I'm not well enough, we can certainly do something at home, maybe in Nuremberg,
Mhm.
where he lived.
Mhm.
Um, And so I thought, okay, well, I hope those concerts move forward. He said, yeah, contact me, towards the end of your filming trip, and we'll see where we're at. That was a very busy filming trip. We filmed, I think, in all 19 new episodes, and his was the very end of that very exhausting trip,
Mhm.
which ended up being kind of an advantage. And I'll get to that in a minute. But I called him a few days before. And I said, "How are you doing?" And he says, "Well, actually, I had to cancel those concerts in France, so I'm home.
Mhm.
Um, not feeling so strong, um, but I'd like to do it. So, let's find a target date. Why don't you message me the day before?"
Mhm.
And so I did, and I quickly realized through his voice that he sounded pretty weak. Um, I said, "Well, we don't we don't have to do this. That's going to take away your energy." He says, "Let's see how I feel in the morning."
Mhm.
I thought that's amazing. I mean, he's really living from moment to moment. Um, so I called him up in the morning, and he says, "Yeah, we can do it." I could really feel like he wasn't feeling up to it, but he was
Sure.
saying yes anyway.
Sure.
Um, so we took I took the train from Munich to Nuremberg, and I said, "How am I going to handle this?" I feel like there's a special opportunity to speak with a pianist. Um, how much longer do we have this opportunity? We went there. We arrived with the crew. Found that Lars was in isolation because one of his family members was sick, and he couldn't be around people who were sick because he was, I believe, immunocompromised based on his various treatments. And so I walked in, and I was very worried when I saw his energy level. I saw kind of this in the last days of Steve Jobs. There was just kind of a look of someone who was kind of between this world and the next.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I was there, and I said, "What do I do? I'm also feeling really tired."
Mhm.
Um, we had yet again kind of an advantage with the crew. There was some technical issue. We were slow to set up. So what happened was I started talking to Lars, and we went to his balcony that looked overlooked the garden. It was this beautiful, peaceful space, and I just said, "This is what I'm trying to do with my show. These are the conversations. This is the target audience, and we hear from people all around the world that these stories help them. and we're trying to actually talk more than just about music. We're trying to talk about life and hopefully tell stories that people will find empowering, inspiring, maybe give them some hope. And so I could see he really got it. He really got it, and I could see he was really tuning into me. And we had about 45 minutes of conversation on the balcony. And I said, Lars, I understand what you're going, at least peripherally, I know of what you're going through. Is that something that we could touch upon? And he says, you can ask me anything. I trust you. I said, wow, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the conversation started.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the amazing impression that the more he was talking about his music, his inspirations, his projects, and especially his teachers, the more and more alive he became,
Yeah.
the more and more energetic he became. I initially thought, okay, let's only do 15 or 20 minutes and then we'll let you go and rest.
Mm-hmm.
But by the end of it, I actually kind of had to cut it off only because I wanted to be mindful of, he could have kept on going.
Yeah.
I felt he was really, really participating in this.
Yeah.
And for people who haven't seen that episode, you go and you can see a person who's really struggling with a health situation that was, to most of us, involved with a terminal cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But his radiance and his sense of hope were mesmerizing. And I had to struggle to keep it together a few times, where he talked about the value of telling people in his life what they meant to him, what they mean to him.
Yeah.
As something that we can do anyway. I think if there's an essence of the show that I try to go for, I had the feeling that this might likely be the last opportunity for him to do something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And when I said goodbye to him, I also had the feeling, would I ever see him again? Probably not.
Yeah.
We kept in touch. I was so inspired by what he shared.
Mm-hmm.
What was great was that we released this while he was still alive.
Yeah.
So there was a huge global response to it before he passed. Mm-hmm. And I was glad that he got to see that.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, these were sort of the final words that they associated with him. And he was kind of giving a talk that implicitly addressed all of that.
Yeah.
About 2 weeks after it was released, he left a message for me on WhatsApp as a voice memo. Mm-hmm. He was saying, thank you for this beautiful conversation. Mm-hmm. And then he gave me a wish, which was, he said, wherever you go in this life, try to spend as much time on the sunny side of life as you can, because there's so much beauty. He said, that's my wish for you. I could hear his voice was so weak. I felt like it was a goodbye.
Yeah.
And then it was just a few days later that I learned that he had passed. And so I realized with some sense of strange gratitude that we had an incredible opportunity that day to portray some of his amazing radiance. And that message, there were so many people who were moved to tears by that. And that only peripherally had to do with me. I just have a platform. The other people are telling their stories. I just opened the door for them. And what a privilege for me. Hopefully it won't always have to be quite that cathartic in those types of circumstances. Right. But we're also trying to portray life. And he was able to portray in what I thought was a beautiful and hopeful way messages about the life cycle.
And I think what was so powerful amongst like so many of the things he shared, he was so full of energy, but just the way he spoke, it almost did feel like while he was hopeful, it almost felt like he knew that he may not have had that much more time left, like just on his own. And so it really, I think it gave, for him, it was just this opportunity to kind of like what you mentioned before, say goodbye to the world in a way. And I think that's what's so powerful, because as far as I'm aware, like that was the last public appearance he had made, as far as I'm aware.
I
So
think so, at least on video. I know that there were some wonderful features that were written around that time, including
mhm,
from my friend Jessica Dushin.
yeah,
But I still felt ultimately that he was giving a gift to all of us who were watching,
yeah,
including to me as the host.
mhm,
Um, the New York Times mentioned the episode.
mhm,
A lot of people referred to it in other obituaries.
mhm,
Um, yeah, I'm still somewhat speechless
yeah,
about that whole thing, and that was just a year ago, and it feels like already ages ago. There's so many people. The outpouring that came after he passed showed how beloved he was, and he was almost 52. Can you imagine?
mhm,
He was just 51.
right,
That is so young.
yeah,
That's so young.
yeah,
If you look at classical musicians, as far as pianists went, a lot of them, Artur Rubinstein, Vladimir Horowitz, a lot of them started discovering kind of their golden years, above the age of 65.
yeah, yeah,
Like where could he have gone?
yeah,
He connected with so many people on clearly a really personal level. It just seems to be, if you watch not just what he's saying, how he's saying it is
yeah,
so direct and honest, and just really, to me, it was all about essence.
mhm, yeah.
So Lars Vogt, wow,
Yeah, I know.
cathartic
No,
just even
yeah, yeah,
recounting that.
yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that you guys were able to do that right before, and it's a tribute, and it serves as a great memorial for him for the years to come.